Okay, well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's audiocast from PSI Talent Management. We're a global business who design and deliver talent identification, selection, and development solutions across the globe. My name is Daryl Murray. I'm the Director of Consulting Solutions for PSI Talent Management's UK region. And today's audiocast focuses on engagement and well-being, and I'm going to be discussing this with my guest, James Hampton, who's the Head of Development and Engagement at Seasalt, Cornwall. So good morning, James, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Just a little bit about Seasalt. So Seasalt is a design and fashion business with an iconic brand that began its life in Penzance in the early 1980s, where originally the business sold traditional workwear to local farmers, fishermen and artists. And it's now one of Cornwall's largest employers with over 70 Seasalt shops around the UK and Ireland. So James, can you tell us a little bit more about the organisation and maybe its growth to date?
Yeah, you're quite right. It was the Chadwick brothers and their dad Don that actually set it up as General Clothing back in 1981. It's actually our 40th year next year, so lots of birthday celebrations next year. The business was General Clothing probably all the way up till the early 2000s. Unfortunately, Don passed away at that stage, and the brothers decided to take it on and turn it into the fashion brand as you see it today as Seasalt. Neil Chadwick, his wife Sophie, has been a big part of that. So she's a print designer by her trade. So a lot of her influences have come into the brand and laid the foundation, I suppose, of what Seasalt is today. Since I've been with Seasalt coming up to 4 years in March next year, and we've grown around 28% year on year, I think, since 2015. And so I think we had 40 stores in 2017 when I joined. We're now at 71 stores, UK and Ireland. We wholesale internationally, so we just opened up a lot of concessions out in the US last year. And we've started to open up a number of stockists around Europe, mainly sort of Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, France, main sort of established spaces there. And we have quite a prominent sort of digital representation now. So we kind of see ourselves as an omni-channel retailer now, where we can distribute pretty much from any of our stores now, which is really, really nice, and enables our customers to get their product as quickly as we possibly can to them. And some of those efficiencies are we've just launched an international website, whereas before it was very much a UK website, and people had to convert into their own currency, whereas now that's not the case. So yeah, I think in the last year or so we've been sort of moving towards that omni-channel capability as a retailer.
Oh, that's a fantastic growth story there, James. You must be very proud, and the whole organisation with where it's going.
Yeah, it's a fantastic business to work for, and exciting, always innovating, always moving things forward. So it's a great place to do my job, definitely.
Fantastic. So what would be really good to hear about, James, would be about Seasalt's philosophy about engagement and well-being of its employees.
Yeah, so Seasalt has always had a really connected, close family feel. The brothers have maintained that throughout the growth of the business. As they stopped the daily running of the day, Paul Hayes, our CEO, the daily business, he has also maintained that as well. So how we connect to our people is always a large part of what we do. And from an employee engagement side of things, while we've been focusing on that, I suppose, in the last 3 years, making sure that our people are at a similar level to our customers has also been a large part of what we do. And we know that to make sure that our customers are happy, we need to have happy employees, and so we have continued to ask questions, give our employees voice, and involve them in decision making as we've grown, certainly in the last three years, to make sure that whatever changes or movements we make in the business are consulted and part of what our people would like to see Seasalt do as well. So the general philosophy, I suppose, is that providing people with psychological safety in the business helps us know more, innovate more, create more, and become more successful. So that model of I think there's sort of service profit sort of chain that gets talked about quite a lot.
Yeah.
We've been applying that and testing it and experimenting with it and ensuring that we can see those things happen. So I suppose that's the philosophy.
Oh, absolutely. So I guess in terms of this year, of course, one of the biggest threats to engagement and well-being has been the impact of COVID. So how has Seasalt responded to those challenges? And there've been many challenges, I'm sure, for your organisation as well as every other organisation. So how has it responded, and what's been the impact?
Yeah, well, I mean, the impact in the first lockdown back in March was around 80% of our business was furloughed. So it was very, very down to the wire with those that could still stay in. The executive took a big cut in their own pay, and other senior leaders were doing the same. I think at the time I was working a 4-day week, and many others were doing the same. I suppose what we were able to see is that some of the work that we'd done probably previously held us in a really good place because we'd maybe built some resilience in our teams. We knew that our teams were pretty proud to work for Seasalt. I think we had an 89% feedback on our engagement scores for being proud to work for Seasalt. And I think some of those things really help you to be more resilient with the change as it happens. So we were able to maximise that in the first, so we had good foundations. But then it was a case of just talking a lot and improving our comms channels. We had very fortunately just launched a new learning and communications platform, which we were able to utilise to just keep people up to speed. We were able to bring in more social channels so that people could stay connected using the digital platform, as we couldn't be in the same space to each other. And that helped those that were still working to share ideas and keep talking and keep moving things forward. But those that were furloughed to keep in touch, because there's always that risk that when people are furloughed, they then feel even more separated from the business. So supporting our managers to keep in touch with people, and again, because we've done a lot of work with emotional intelligence with PSI, actually, we've done a lot of that work, and that was kind of around the business. People were able to check in with themselves, check in with each other, use some of the the win-win sort of perspectives to go, look, well, am I feeling burnt out today, and is that going to impact my psychology and how I behave and how I turn up, and I need to be mindful of those things. And so a lot of the foundational work that we've been doing over the last 3 years really helped us, I think, to do that well. So I think it's turning up the volume, regular conversations from the CEO, regular weekly updates from him. He was very proactive, as were other of the execs, keeping people in touch. And I think so that senior leadership vision continue to keep people up to speed, and even if it's not so good news, being honest and authentic with that news, and being really open. And I think those kind of that kind of mentality, or that sort of mindset with dealing with our people and equally with our customers, we didn't take a ram our product down your throat approach. We actually decided quite mindfully that we would be supportive, and it was about looking after people throughout that period, both employees and customers, and that was a better way to go rather than panic selling or panic sales and trying to push product down people's throats, as I said. So I think taking that mindset that you just need to look after each other over that period was a really good decision, I think, to take. I think we reopened really well. We were able to keep our teams up to speed. We did a lot of learning programs with them and information programs with them to help them get back to the store and reopen the store, and also come back to the office at the time when they could as well. Our product teams, who like to have hands-on with the product, quite rightly, weren't able to do that, and were obviously wanted to do that. So we wanted to find ways that they could get back together, create and collaborate really effectively, and we were able to do that really well. But also over that period, been aware that actually we'd started to model some new ways of working, and try to look at, okay, what could be the future as well. So and I suppose that's where we are right now, is looking at what we might do in the future.
So the new ways of working, I mean, were they quite organic? Was it deliberate, or was it a case of let's try different things out and see what works in this period?
A bit of both, if I'm honest. I think our head office was 100% in the office. Various people would have some flexibility. So, occasionally I would work from home every now and again, but it was unusual, really, for most. So obviously that meant that everyone was working from home. Like everyone, IT had to pivot and provide IT, and we managed to do that really, really well. We still do have some people that are working on their own computers and having to purchase the side of kitchen tables, and we're doing an amazing amount of work at the moment just to make sure those that still in those situations, we're picking up, we're supporting them, we're giving them access to kits, we're sending out desks to their homes so that they've got something to work from, and opening those things up. So some of it was a bit of sort of needs be, using your own, and some of it was quite purposeful. I think now, where we are now, is that noticing the burnout, the constantly on, the struggling to break and take time for themselves. That we did a survey for our head office people in October, and that was coming out. So well-being of our people was coming out quite low. So what we've done now is initiate a sort of a 10 till 12, 1 till 4 meeting zones in our day, and encouraging to set meetings at 50 minutes rather than an hour, so that there's a 10-minute gap. And then loads of people have started to do this. And I think we're still in that transition where habitual norms are in Outlook. It says an hour, so I just book an hour. And I think what we'll do is try to work with our IT teams to see if we can change that that norm that's in Outlook as an hour to 15 minutes, so that people don't realise we do that sort of, I suppose, that that nudge sort of psychology.
Yes,
So people don't have to think about it, and then before they know it, they've booked a 50-minute meeting, and usually that's enough. In some circumstances, it's not always enough, and some people will need to be longer. But those trying to eliminate the burnout and give people some more permission, because I think what we found, when you think people have permission, not everyone thinks that they do, which is kind of a weird place to be, isn't it? Because we're usually quite, as a business, we're open and permissive, and it's not that we're authoritarian and limit people from doing things. But for some reason, some people have felt it difficult to take that permission. It's okay for me to go and have a walk during the day, and if I decide to start a little bit later, that's what I said to you when we jumped on that this morning. I took the dog for a walk. It was a nice morning, so I might work through my lunch, but I've taken my lunch first thing in the morning, got that headspace, and and I'm ready to work for the rest of the day. And giving people that flexibility, we assumed people would take it straight away, but actually we have to almost tell people and almost force people to do it. And also those habitual norms, that, as I said, managers booking time, just being mindful when they're booking this stuff and putting time in people's calendars, that there may be other things going on for them. But also, we've all got to be a bit disciplined with
Absolutely.
it. It's our responsibility to say no to a meeting and challenge it, because I get pulled into all sorts of stuff, and it's great and love to be part of them, but you have to go, actually, I kind of need some time for myself here to do this, and if I don't need to be there, that's fine. So I suppose that our ways of working from home during a pandemic have absolutely been purposeful. What we are now doing, and I'm leading a bit of a small working group that are working particularly on our head offices and our estates, and how we reconfigure them so that they aren't the office rows with computers and desks and people come to work to do that work, because I think we've worked out that we can all do that from elsewhere. But those product teams that do need to be in a creative and collaborative space, so really turning our studios into actual studios. They are studios, and that's where our creatives do our design, but could it be better? Yeah, absolutely. So really freeing up our creative teams to be as creative as we possibly can help them to be. And their physical environment needs to be functional, it needs to be human, it needs to be a space where they can be inspired. Unfortunately, they are overlooking the Falmouth Bay, so that there's lots of inspiration there. But the way that they work probably was a bit more traditional than maybe than it needs to be. So we'll reconfigure those spaces to be more collaborative, have product hanging up. We'll look at 3D modeling so that they can do that both digitally as well. I think our teams will always want to have hands on the textiles.
Yes,
it's part of what we do. It's really important to get that quality. But where we can provide more flexibility, changing our tech so that they can come in to meet, but still go out and have a coffee in a cafe when we're all allowed to do that again, and still be working and not feel that people have to be in the office so that we know that they're doing work, because we know that people are still doing work and they're not in the office now, and being okay with that. And I think that's some of the work we will do, I think, to help from anywhere. It will be a bit of a hybrid, I think. It won't be complete remote work, but I'm actually just recruiting a position. I've just recruited and appointed a position in my team, and that will be a remote role. That person will live in the north. They don't live in Cornwall, and they will work remotely. They will come down to Cornwall, and we will meet with them properly when we're all allowed to. But the large part of her day will be not in Cornwall. So we're starting to sort of dip our toe into kind of that thing as well, which will be an interesting experiment, I think, in a way, to see how we make that work.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating to think that organizations everywhere may not have thought of working in these different ways, and we've almost had a bit of a injection of, oh yes, of course we could think about doing this differently, and why didn't we think of it before? And that, I think, has to be one of the benefits from this period that we've gone through.
Very much so.
What would be good to hear, James, is so we know, and you've referenced it a couple of times, that emotionally intelligent leaders can have a huge impact on the climate of the organisation and its consequent success. And it'd be great to hear from you. Why it was that you brought in PSI's talent management team in the first place. So what was it that sparked the need to work with leaders who are more emotionally intelligent?
Well, I suppose my background and some of the work that I've done, I suppose I'm certainly not a psychologist, but I've done, I suppose, a hobby psychologist, I suppose. You might look at it in that way, more of an amateur. But I've always had a keen interest in people's behaviour, and emotional intelligence. It was something I'd done a lot of reading on in the past, and we'd also, in a previous role in Gloucestershire, worked with the talent team, I think prior to them being PSI. So I knew the work that they were doing. I knew that the work of the emotional intelligence leadership climate indicator, and what I wanted to do when I joined Seasalt was, when I did join, there hadn't been a huge amount of leadership development. There'd been some standard sort of work with ILM, and those were all good, but I wanted to really look at what does it mean to be a leader at Seasalt, and also how do we build capability in our leaders to help the business grow. And for me, emotional intelligence is one of the number one things to sort of help people understand how they currently work, and is it getting the best from themselves and other people. And being able to look at sort of my behaviours, my attitudes and feelings, and really be honest with myself as a leader to say, do I always pitch up in the right way? No, it's not always going to be brilliant, but when I'm not turning up well, how do I deal with it? How do I cope with it? And how do I make sure that I'm still being effective? And when I'm in a good place, how do I maximise that period of time as well? So I've always had a strong belief in it, and found it worked for me as a person, and wanted to bring that into Seasalt. So we started to do the work with Andrew, and started to share some more education and knowledge and understanding about what emotional intelligence was and what it wasn't as well, and and how it can be developed in people. and helping our leaders begin to sort of groove that skill of becoming more emotionally intelligent. And practice it. I also wanted to increase the amount of feedback that was going on around the business and help people to have difficult conversations, and we looked at that. And also we were looking at how do we look at succession and leadership across the business. So how do we bring managers that maybe were more operational in the past to stand back, more visionary, more inclusive as leaders, to sort of be that more supportive leader, subservient leader, then I suppose is kind of what I would do. So making sure that people realise that leadership wasn't doing the job anymore. It's now time to get out of the way of your team. You've got really talented people working for you. Now it's your turn to sort of coach and develop and bring your teams on. So that was thinking of it. We also hadn't done much work on employee engagement. So at the same time, I was beginning to look at the criteria of what we would need to do along the business around helping the business grow and keeping people on the boat, I suppose. Sort of paddling with us and going with us. And a lot of that was looking at what people were motivated by, what their mindset was, and trying to marry those two things together. So if our leaders really know what their teams want to get to and where they want to get, and they are okay with that, because a lot of that's about someone doesn't want to work in your team, you can be a bit defensive and a bit upset by that, can't you? So it's then going, okay, it's about the benefit of the business and not just about my silo, and trying to break down some of those silos of the business. So that was the sort of the thinking behind it, and we're still working on that as well. I think there's still some question to have.
And what was the impact of that? I mean, obviously it's something that you've been seeing come through over the years. I mean, when you look now at your your leadership population and people that they're leading, what can you see that's different, having brought in these philosophies?
I think probably what I see in our people generally, rather than our leaders, is that they're really open and willing to feedback. Whereas maybe in the past they were maybe a bit more reluctant to do that. So there's certainly more feedback. We get really honest feedback in all of our surveys now, and I suppose the key to keeping that going is doing stuff with it as well. So not just having that door open and letting people talk. And so some of that is that our leaders across the business are encouraging it and providing that more psychological safety around the business, so that people are willing to share that information, and they're not worried that if they say you try to make a recommendation for an improvement, that someone's going to just sort of cut them down or cut them away. They're actually building partnerships and really collaborating. So we're definitely seeing that. I think just during this whole COVID period, people have become really resilient, and they it's still something we will continue to look at and helping people. And we've all every single, I include myself in it, you suffer from a little bit of isolation, and you have to check in with yourself every now and again. But in the main, everyone is managed incredibly well. And I think that's a good example of I think if we hadn't done that work, maybe we wouldn't have been as resilient or as agile as we have been. So I think that's a really good example of it. And our store teams have really embraced it. In fact, all of our managers have embraced it. No one's gone, oh, that's a little bit fluffy, or that's a little bit that's not for us. They've really taken it on board. Leaders are actually promoting it within their teams, or they were. I think we're at a stage where we probably need to now pick it back up again and start to remind our leaders, look, we've done this work, you can use it, here's all the resources, and make sure people have that at their fingertips so that they can use it. One of the things we did do was, I know that at PSI you have a journal with all of the emotional intelligence bits at the front.
Right,
we kind of borrowed that idea, and with your permission, used the check-in tree with all of the different people on the tree. That went into our journal. So we developed a performance review journal, an acknowledgement that people just like to write notes. So our teams are quite creative. They like hands-on, they like sketching, they like doing those sort of things. So in that journal, we've put all of our one-to-one guidance in there. but as well we put the check-in tree in there and the leadership climate indicator, so that every time they have a one-to-one, hopefully they're flicking through those pages and go, okay, what mindset do I need to be in before I have this one-to-one? Am I in a good place? Should I be doing this now? Asking themselves those questions so that the conversation they have is really, really effective. In our stores, they now have the check-in tree at the back of house in a big poster. And every time before they go onto the shop floor, when they're open, the teams will check in with everyone, just say, look, where are you today? So the manager has a good understanding of how people are pitching up. So if someone's having a bit of a bad day, they can maybe say, oh, why don't you work on the back of house today? Let's not put you in front of the customers today. When you're ready, we can bring you front of house again. So you're really understanding your people's mindset, so that you're not our customers get the best experience from our people, and our people feel comfortable with that as well. So that conversation has really changed, and I think it's, I certainly can't say that our ability to maintain our place on the high street is solely down to that, but because I think we've done that, it's absolutely helped. Products is hugely beneficial for that, and contributed to that, and we'd never sort of look past it. But the whole customer experience and employee experience and connecting those two things together is really, really important. And I think getting the employee experience bit right helps the customer experience work even better.
Oh, that's fantastic. And with the customer experience, do you do any surveying of customers? I mean, do you have sort of data from them that it shows you just what an impact all the changes you've been making have?
Yeah, we actually did surveys during lockdown. We actually asked our store staff how they thought customers came back when we reopened. And we also asked our customers similar sorts of questions to get an understanding whether the changes we'd made and the measures we'd taken to keep people safe were effective, and they were pretty much as per you'd expect, and incredible feedback from our customers. Tons of really sort of great feedback on how our teams were supporting and looking after and trying to manage the queuing outside of stores and the numbers in stores. It's just an absolute headache for our teams that just want people in their stores and want to talk to people. It just made their lives so much more difficult. But the feedback's been really, really great, and our teams have been really, really happy with it as well. So we know that we're getting that, and we get feedback on our product all the time, but feedback from our customers is hugely valuable to understand whether we've got it right internally too. So lots and lots of questions being asked, and lots of willing customers to give us feedback too.
Which is great. That's super that they're happy to do that. And then I guess hopefully we are all now seeing light at the end of the tunnel, and we will emerge into a brave new world in 2021. So I guess, do you have any sort of key takeaways for either the HR or the business community who might be listening to us today, who are also looking to reignite their people, post the worst of the pandemic and getting sort of back to normal, or as normal as we can hope?
I think from a HR side, the team have done an amazing job at managing. Certainly, the fluctuations of lockdown in some areas, lockdown in not in other areas, and we have had to furlough teams and managing that and keeping people informed. So I think the quality of our team is outstanding, and I certainly would say that. But the collaboration within that team is brilliant too. So I think what we have found is that maybe our business partnering in the retail teams was working really, really well, but at head office maybe we've been firefighting maybe a little bit too much. So what the team have done is they've really re-established their partnering at head office, and that's now really proactive and forward focused. And so being okay with making change in your HR team is part of this, of being able to go, okay, stuff is working and it's all right, but how can we really continually improve? So the continual improvement bit of constantly challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves to do things better is part of it. So I'd probably encourage other HR teams to be really frank and open with yourself, and be self-critical and go, okay, how can we do this better? But also asking the business some questions on, we would like to look at our HR team and what we do and how we service the business. What bits would you change, and get that feedback? That helps loads. I think other key takeaways is about never forgetting the human at the end of the line. And we're so busy talking to our computers now, like we are doing now, being aware that there's a human being sitting in a room with four walls, with, not much around them, and just talking to people, that basic human quality that we have of speech and language, making the absolute most of that, and the human side of that, and being authentic and open and transparent. Those things are that you just can't. They are the gold dust, and I think we get so hooked up on the task of business, of operation. We've got to sell, and those things are all really important. Don't get me wrong, but the people that are doing it for you are those people that are sat by themselves, worrying about their jobs, worrying about their lives, worrying about their family and the safety of people. So if you can address that, I suppose, that basic survival need, and Maslow's gets a bad rep sometimes, but actually, there's some reality there, isn't there? The things that actually matter to us. If we can sort those things out for people, then they've stopped being a distraction for people, and they've become much more focused on and more comfortable with doing work, and more effective as a result. So I suppose those are the sort of main ones, I think.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, well, James, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you this morning, and just like to say thank you. You've shared some fantastic insights, the story of Seasalt, its journey, everything it's been doing during the last 10 months or so, and really to hear from you about how useful it is to look at emotional intelligence in leadership, and how that cascades down to the workforce. So that's just a great story to hear. So thank you. Thank you very
welcome.
much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. So sadly, I'm not in Cornwall. I'm on the beach this morning, but it sounds like a fabulous place to be. And for those who want to know more, you can hear more about PSI's approach to emotional intelligence by visiting our website, and that's psionline.com. So thank you, and look forward to sharing more stories with you on another occasion. Thank you.
If you would like to hear more about the solutions discussed in today's podcast, or you would like to join a future podcast discussion, please visit psionline.com/talent. Thank you for listening.